Welcome back to Python scripting for ArcGIS. This is a class at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, spring semester 2015. In this session, we're going to work with text fields in the field calculator using Python. So what we'll do is, if you go to properties for our test table, turn all of them off except for our text field, because that's what we're going to be working with, is just text fields in this example. And then open up your table. Okay, so let's add a new text field, and it'll be text, and you could call it whatever you want. I'll call it new ext field. And then we'll add another field that will be short integer, and we'll call that check. Okay, so when working with text fields in Python in the field calculator, there's a bunch of functions that are applicable to strings. So if you just click on string, these are all the functions that are available with strings, and I'll go through the most common functions. If you want to learn about each of those functions, you can basically use help in Python to learn about each of those functions. So for example, if we start the Python interpreter, we'll just make a string variable called test, and you could make it whatever you want. So we've got this object test, and it's a string object. So then basically we could use help to basically get help on any function that string object has. So if we do test dot, it'll list all the functions that are available for that. So for example, test.center, let's do help on that. So help test.center. So basically it says center is a function where you give it the width and then whatever fill character you want to use. So it returns a string centered in the length width, and the padding is done using this fill character. So for example, we could say test2 is equal to test.center, and then the width, we'll make it 16 characters, and then we'll fill it with a dash as our fill character. So then if we look at test2, it's 16 characters, our string is centered, and the fill characters are this dash. So that's how you can learn about any of these functions in the Python shell. Okay, so let's go back to ArcMap and we'll test drive some of these string functions. Okay, the first series of functions we'll work with basically do tests or checks with string variables, and they typically return a 1 for true and a 0 if it's false. So we'll go to this short integer field called check, and then call up the field calculator, and then we're going to use Python, and then string. And these checks, most of them they start with a .is. So let's say go to our text field, and then .is upper. So that will test each field, and is it uppercase, and okay. So here, this was all uppercase, so it returned a 1. The other records were not all uppercase, so it returns a 0 for false for that check. Okay, we could do the opposite, and we could do a calculation. String is lower. So here is a string that was all lowercase, so that check was true, and the other records, that check was false. Okay, another check would be our text field is title, and then okay. So here is a text field that is considered a title, so every word, every individual string starts with a capital letter. So that's true, that is a title. This one is not a title because here we have more than one uppercase. This one's not a title because in this string right here, we've got an uppercase S and an uppercase F in the same string. Okay, another check we can do is .starts with. And then enclosed in the parentheses, what is the key character string that we're looking for that it starts with? So let's say, does it start with a character string all? And OK. So the first record does start with a character string all, so that returns true. And all the other records, it returns false. And we can do the opposite, ends with. So ends with, enclosed in parens, the string that it's going to search for. So let's say ends with a G, and then OK. So here's the one record where the string does end with a G. And we could also search every string from left to right using the .find function. So in this example, enclosed in the parentheses, the characters we're going to search for. So let's search for a character lowercase o, and then OK. And if it doesn't find lowercase o, it returns a -1, which means that it could not find it. And if it finds it, it returns the position that occurred in the string. So for example, here, at position 5, the first occurrence of the O starting from left to right occurred. So for example, position 0 would be the uppercase P, and then 1, 2, 3, position 4 is where the O occurred. Okay, so the find function works from left to right. There's a related function, the rfind, which starts from the right and goes to the left. So we'll just change this to rfind. It will basically start at the right or the end of the string and then search to the left. And then execute this. So basically, for this one, it returned position 5. So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this one, it returned position 17. So that would be this O right here is at position 17. Okay, we could also use the function .count to tell us how many times a search string occurs. So how many times does lowercase o occur in, I need to enclose in double quotes or single quotes, lowercase o, and then OK. So the first string that it tested, it occurred 0 times. The last string that it tested, it occurred twice. So here's an O the first time, here's an O the second time. Okay, there are other functions besides checking strings. We could actually manipulate the string. So let's do field calculation on new text field and use the Python Parser. So take our text field and use the .title function. So the .title function will find each word, so basically our words are separated by spaces, and give each word an uppercase as a starting character. And then OK. So basically this string becomes this string. So each word starts with a uppercase now. If you want your string to have all uppercase, we could use the .upper function. And the opposite of that would be, if you want all lowercase, we can use the .lower function. So then everything's lowercase. Okay, we could use the .replace function to fix spelling errors. So here's an example. For this selected record, we have field is misspelled. So we'll use the .replace function to fix that. So it's going to be .replace, and then the old string that it's going to search for. So in this case, it's FEI. In this case, it's FEI, and replace that with FIE. And then just OK, and you'll notice I'm doing this calculation on that text field. So that fixes that incorrect spelling. Here's another example. We have scripting 4. We need a space between scripting and 4. Select that record. And then field calculator. So that fixed that spelling error. Okay, we could also justify strings. So if we go to our field calculator in our text field, this text field is 50 characters wide. So what we could do is take that and then use the string function .center. So we're going to center in that 50 character string and pad it with some character. So I'll pad it with an asterisk just as an example. So now we have our 50 character string and it's padded with asterisks. Okay, we might want to get rid of some characters. So like, for example, let's get rid of these asterisks. So to do that, we use the .strip function. So .strip, and then whatever string or character you want to get rid of. So in this case, we'll get rid of the string asterisk enclosed either in single quotes or double quotes. So that basically strips away that character, the asterisk character. And we could left justify our string using the left just function. So we'll left justify our string 50 characters and we'll pad it with, I'll pad it with dashes just to do something different. So now our string's left justified and it's padded with dashes. And each is 50 characters, but we have sort of a variable font. So, for example, a lowercase a does not take up the same space as an L. So that's why it appears that they're not exactly the same width, but they are. If we had a fixed font, then you could see that they are exactly the same width. Okay, so we'll strip away those dashes using the .strip function. And then we might want to right justify. So we'll use a string function, right justify. So take our text field, right justify it. The total length of the field is 50 characters, and we'll right justify it using, in this case, I'll just use a space and OK. And then basically everything's right justified, and it's just the characters are proportional, so that's why it looks this way. So basically it was about like that. And if we had characters that were the same width, then everything would be right justified. Okay, so if you go to the Blackboard website, I've got a quiz question for you that will lead you to the next video session, which will be using functions in the Python field calculator.